Do you love TV shows? We do too. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're searching for a new favorite series or ready to revisit an old classic, we're here to guide you through an infinite world of TV shows.
Each episode, we watch and discuss the pilot for shows, while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
So if you're tired of endlessly scrolling and not sure what to watch next, tune in and let us do the searching for you.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hello. Happy Thursday. It's almost the end of the week.
It is.
Yes, I'm ready for Friday. I know this goes into your hard stretch of work, though.
Yeah, but then I know I get 2 days off. All right, so we are continuing this month with adult animation. I don't know why, not in a bad way. The month itself has felt like it has dragged on forever.
It has.
Not with our podcast, not in a bad way, but just the month in general has just really dragged on. I don't know if maybe we're just because we've been anticipating going to graduation. It's at the very end of the month, but you were asking me earlier, you thought that this was going to be
the last one
for the month. And I'm like, no, boo, we got 2 more and we're still debating on if we're going to do one right now. Right. So, and I was still, up until I hit record, I was on my phone looking at other shows we could possibly watch.
And I mean, I say that, but then maybe we should just do it because it might just give us something to talk about in the fact of why we were considering changing it.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Because we both felt the same thing.
Yeah, and not in a bad way. It just was the show that we watched was just it was the first show that I felt was very, like, kid-centric, where I felt like it was for maybe, like, a younger... I mean, I know it's still adult animation. It's still, like... I would say TV 14. I wouldn't say TV MA.
Okay.
But it's not like the other shows that we've done. So it just, maybe that's why it just felt more like a show for kids.
That's it.
Maybe that was why. It was still really good. The animation on it was really cool. We could talk about that. We could talk about a lot of things.
Yeah. We'll stick with it probably.
We'll probably stick with it. We might have to rewatch it. But but we'll probably end up sticking with it because all the other ones that I see are just like kind of more of the same.
Yeah,
just the Family Guys and the American Dads and all of that like type of
genre.
Animation. And so I mean, and it's definitely different than everything. We just need to pay attention and think of some stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
I think that's like the main issue.
Yeah. And then we did watch a bunch of them all at the same time.
We watched like 4 of them in one night.
Yeah. So
and
might
that
be
was the
my
last
problem.
one. And that was the last one we watched.
That might be my problem is that they were all kind of running together, so I just might need to watch the first few minutes and go, okay, that was what it was about. So
so we are but we remembered this one. it was actually very memorable. I really enjoyed it. It is based on one of the biggest video game franchises.
Oh, okay.
At least in I would say at least for like millennials and Gen Xers, it's Castlevania. They made an animated series about it that came on Netflix, and I remember seeing previews for it. It was one of those shows that like I saw a preview for it and then I just forgot about it. It was just one of those like, because I played the game. I think I played the first like 3 or 4 of them because it was back in like the Super Nintendo days when I was playing like video games all the time because I was like a kid. But yeah, it was ended up being surprisingly good. I would say like we'll get more into that. But for now, you're just going to do what you always do and give us some episode and series information.
All right, let's do it. Castlevania Witch Bottle. Castlevania was a dark fantasy adult animated series that premiered on Netflix on July 7th, 2017 and concluded on May 13th, 2021. The series has a total of 4 seasons and 32 episodes. The series was created by Warren Ellis, who is mainly known for being a comic book artist. Ellis worked on several Marvel comics such as X-Men, Doctor Strange, and Thunderbolts. Every episode of the first season was written by Ellis and directed by Sam Dietz. Castlevania is based on the video game franchise created by Konami. The first game was released on Nintendo in 1986. The first season is mostly based on Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. As of right now, there are a total of 32 Castlevania games. The series focuses on the vampire Vlad Dracula, taking revenge on the people of Wallachia.
I think it's Wallachia.
Wallachia,
yeah.
Okay. After they burn his human wife at the stake after being falsely accused of witchcraft, he has summoned an army of demons to wipe out the population and overrun the country. It's up to Trevor Belmont, the last living member of a family of monster slayers, to defeat Dracula and his army of demons. The cast of characters include our protagonist, Trevor Belmont, our antagonist, Vlad Dracula, Alucard, the hybrid human vampire son of Vlad and Lisa, who seeks to protect humanity from his father, Sifa, a magic user who sides with Trevor and Alucard, the bishop, a corrupt clergyman who accused Lisa of witchcraft and ordered the burning, Lisa, Vlad's beloved wife, who believed in science and was burned at the stake, and the elder, Sifa's grandfather. Later in the series, actors such as Theo James, Peter Stormare, Jessica Brown Finlay, Jason Isaacs, and Malcolm McDowell would provide voices for the series. Castlevania was an immediate success, becoming one of the most watched Netflix series each year. Castlevania was an immediate success, becoming one of the most watched Netflix series each year. A new season was released. Seasons 2 and 4 currently hold a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the series holds an 8.3 on IMDb. A spin-off series called Castlevania Nocturne was released on Netflix in 2023, and the series currently has 2 seasons and 16 episodes. The second season came out earlier this year in 2025, and the third season has yet to be confirmed. You can currently watch the entire series on Netflix.
Yeah, I did make one of the few shows this month that didn't make the top 250.
Yeah, I know. That was kind of a surprise considering how many people liked it.
Right.
I mean, it just might be random that people just don't go on and rank it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. So what did you think of the pilot?
I mean, I liked it. You know that I love anything with, the vampires and all of that. I mean, I've loved that since I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Love at First Bite, Dracula, Bram Stoker's, Twilight series.
Fright Night, Lost
Boys, all of those. Yeah. So I'm always down. And so when you picked this one and you told me what it was about, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Because I feel like this goes into the genres of just movies and TV shows that I love. I felt like I would like it, and I did. So, yes.
Yeah. I liked it. I really liked the animation.
Yeah.
I loved it felt like the animation felt kind of old school. It felt like I was watching one of those animated films from the 80s. It felt like a classic. I'm trying to think of an example. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but it felt very just old school, and maybe that was the intention because Castlevania started in the 80s. Maybe that was the point to kind of give you that vibe.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. A lot of the characters that you mentioned weren't introduced in the pilot. So I didn't know how to pronounce those names. So hopefully you pronounced them correctly.
Butchered them in any way. Yeah. I'm sure I did. So,
but yeah, I liked it, and it did kind of make me remember the video games and just kind of be like, man, those video games are really cool. I was like, when was the last time I played one? It was probably 30 years ago.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. Maybe on Nintendo 64, so that would have been maybe still 28 years ago or something like that. So,
Gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, and of course, same. I love the story of Dracula, but I like that they're kind of going back to the Dracula origin.
Yes.
The actual person who that was his actual name, Vlad Dracula Tepes or something like that, and he was a real. I mean, whether or not he was a vampire is up to you, but to theorize on that, he was just a serial killer, just a 14th century version of a serial killer. But yeah, I was interested in wanting to continue, especially 32 episodes. I was just kind of like, that feels easy. That feels just like a movie trilogy, like in total, because I don't think the episodes were that. I don't remember if this was one of the. No, I think it was only like 30 minutes. So if it.
Yeah, they're only 25, 23 minutes. I'm like looking.
You're looking at it right now. Yeah. So I mean, that's an easy one. That's a super. I think out of all the shows we've done this month, that's probably the easiest watch.
Yeah, I mean, we could totally watch that on like a Saturday.
Like that and Death Note are like the easiest watches out of all the ones. I mean, I doubt we're gonna go back and rewatch The Simpsons.
I like something that's familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously because it's familiar, but it makes it easy to watch the whole story.
Right.
And if it has a good story, it makes it easy to watch all of those episodes relatively quickly. So that's not hard at all.
So we have both seen a lot of this is a little off topic, but we've seen a lot of iterations of Dracula.
Yes.
I mean, like you said, Love at First Bite. There were what was his name? The Dracula from the 60s, Christopher Lee. I can't remember who played Dracula, but he was like, to me, he was like the scary
Vincent Price.
Yeah, he was like the one from the 60s was like the scary Dracula.
Okay.
I don't remember who it was, and then there's like parodies, but like there's Bram Stoker's Dracula. There are all these kind of like, there's Nosferatu, which is like a bootleg version of Dracula because they originally couldn't get the rights to the book, so they made their own version of it when they made the original movie. Do you think that Dracula is like a tragic villain, or do you think he's just a straight up villain? Because I think that there are two different ideas of who Dracula is. If he's just like, sometimes he's portrayed as like a straight up villain, and other times it's kind of like he's just lonely and he's just looking for,
there's
you know what I mean?
Well,
like,
there's always that concept of living forever.
Right.
I mean, while that sounds great because you're sort of frozen in time.
Yeah.
But you never really ever can love anyone because everyone is always going to eventually die unless you turn them, so I think that was, I will bring this one up. It's like in Twilight when Rosalie is talking, to Bella, and she's just like, I'm frozen in time. I'll never be able to have children.
Mm-hmm.
I never grow old. I won't have grandchildren. And life became better when Emmett, was turned, and that became her partner. So she finally had someone. So, and then you can go biblical and, talk about like Pontius Pilate, who was, destined to walk the earth until whenever. But, I won't go that way.
I was like, he's a vampire?
Well, no, he's not a vampire. But you're talking about like longevity of life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I it's hard not to think of him as a villain because he does kill people and has to have their blood, I guess, to survive in some way.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a combo of both. It's they're, miserable, but yet they're also terrible people.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, vampires, I feel like vampires kind of ride that line because you'll have the Twilight vampires who are even the evil ones, I mean, they're very non-threatening, seemingly non-threatening, like they're not. And then you have the vampires from like 30 Days of Night or Lost Boys, where they're just like, we love it. We love killing people. We love living forever. Let's ride some motorcycles and, do our thing, live in a cave or whatever they did in Lost Boys. Or 30 Days of Night, which was a great strategy of just taking out all these little towns out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska, where they have no sunlight, which love that movie. Anyway, I just found it interesting that like I always kind of think of Dracula specifically because they always do different interpretations of Dracula. They always kind of do different portrayals. I would say like the old like 60s Dracula was much more like evil, and then maybe like Bram Stoker's Dracula, you kind of, or maybe Nosferatu, you kind of saw the evil, but then you also saw like the vulnerability,
right?
And because you know, it like you said, you're kind of destined to walk this earth alone when you're a vampire, and you never grow old. You never, which I didn't fully understand. Bram Stoker's Dracula, him looking different at different points. I didn't fully understand that, but that movie is wild. So.
Yeah. Yes.
I haven't seen that movie in a really long time. We might need to watch that one night.
Oh yeah, I can watch
I
it.
haven't seen it in such a long time. But anyway, I just always find it interesting because Dracula's kind of the one out of all the vampires. He's the one that's kind of like, you know, he's a bad guy, but you also like think he's cool. You also think that like I don't know. I mean, like the especially with like the original Dracula, he was so like charming, and the whole idea is like all these people are just so mesmerized by him because he's just so like charming and mysterious, and then it just seems, I don't know, just
it's like Interview with a Vampire. You have Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, and then throw in Kirsten Dunst, and she's like a maniac killing people and feasting on blood, and she traps people into, you know, helping her, and then she kills them.
Yeah.
And then you have, you know, Brad Pitt, who tries to be good and eats rats and stuff. So, you know, I mean, it's
Lestat's another interesting one.
Yeah.
Lestat's Tom Cruise. Like, Lestat's another interesting one where it's like, because I read the first 3 Vampire Chronicle books that like were very Lestat centric. And in the first one, you're like, God, this guy's a piece of shit. And then in Vampire Lestat, you're like, oh, I feel kind of bad for him. And then Queen of the Damned, you're kind of like, all right, you suck, but also like I feel bad for you. So like that's also kind of the idea of you know, him just wanting to spend eternity with someone, but they either get killed or they go off and do their own thing because they're eternal, and so they're like, bye, you know, I don't want to be with one person forever. I want to start changing people or whatever they do. Just a random thought I had about Dracula, and since it's specifically about Dracula, because Vampire Diaries, I think, is the only other vampire related thing we've done, because we were going to do Mayfair Witches, we ended up not doing it, which had, I guess that's Anne Rice. It's not really vampires. That's just Anne Rice. Anyway, so just random thought I had.
Okay.
So, would you keep watching Castlevania?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, like we said, 32 episodes. It can't be that hard.
30 minutes each, less than 30 minutes. You could watch 3 an hour and be done in 10 hours if you just sat and watched the whole series.
Right.
I mean, at least one season a day, for sure, you could easily get done. That'd be like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that Castlevania, the video game, invented its own genre, like became its own genre because of how different it was? So Castlevania and another game called Metroid. So up until then, just about every video game back in the 80s and before, like non-arcade games, like home entertainment, like home system games, or what are called like platforms. Like you basically, it's linear gameplay. Your everything is like preset. Everyone goes through the same obstacles at the same time. You have to complete a level, and then you go to the next level. Then you go to the next level, and then you fight a boss, and then you go to the next level. Then you have a final boss. Like that's usually how platformers work. It's very like everything's a pattern. Everything's a sequence. You can kind of figure it out. Like on Press Your Luck.
Oh my God, that was good.
And what Castlevania did was Castlevania and Metroid introduced they didn't introduce it, but they popularized what is called non-linear gameplay, where it's a platformer, but you can also, like, everyone's game is different. Like, you can go explore over here, and a same player can go explore another thing, but you can still meet the same goal.
Okay.
Which is very common now with video games, because pre-sequence, pre-patterned video games, linear gameplay becomes very predictable. And if you're smart enough, or if you're observant enough, you can figure out the patterns, especially with a game called Battle Kid, which is a really difficult game. And you have to fight this giant plant at the very end, or not the very end, but at some point you have to fight this plant that's really hard. And it's like, when it changes colors, it changes sequences, and you have to memorize the sequence. You have to like jump, duck, duck, shoot, jump, duck. Like you have to like do that.
It's like Simon.
Right. And Castlevania and Metroid, they invented Metroidvania. That's the name of the genre.
Okay.
And the earliest platform game came from Donkey Kong, the arcade game. which I don't know if a lot of people know that. That was kind of like the original platformer. So speaking of arcade games, I know you don't really play home like Nintendo and forward games.
Correct.
You've kind of watched me play a few times, and that's about it. But what arcade games? I know you were a big arcade girl. We've talked about that before.
Yes.
You were an arcade girly. And what video games did you like to play at the arcade?
I am absolutely a Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man gal. Back in the 80s, I actually could beat Pac-Man. I could get to a row of all keys, which were the little symbols the levels. I could get it to where it was just all keys, and then eventually I would just start losing on purpose because you could just play forever. I love Centipede, although that one was always very hard to win. I also Tempest. I thought Tempest was such a pretty game. It's the one that looks like this, and it kind of goes around, and you're just like shooting down like a funnel.
Yes, yeah.
Galaga.
Oh, classic.
We
have that at George's, I think.
I think you do.
Yeah.
I also used to, for some reason, just because you could pretend like you were driving, pole position.
Oh, yeah.
Which was also really stupid too. I mean, you would lose so easily on that. I mean, it just ended. It was such a waste of like a quarter.
Right.
It didn't last long. That's why I think I liked Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, because I could play on that quarter quite literally for like. Yeah. I could play for like 30 minutes to an hour on it just because I knew like how to do it. Mm-hmm. I knew the pattern. I did play a little bit of Atari and stuff at friends' house. Yeah. Obviously Pong. I'm like now it just Asteroids, Space Invaders. Yes, Space Invaders, which were the intimations of like Galaga and stuff. Yeah. So we did not have video games growing up. So that was not anything that we had in our house. My nephew had things like Tetris and the little like handheld Nintendos. Game Boy, yes. He was a little bit of a video gamer. I don't know if he has too many video games. He might have some of that stuff. Yeah. But we did not have that, or at least my siblings did not have that. But what about you? What were some of your favorite video games that you played?
Well, this is going to be a little bit more of a list because
I know. Oh my God, did you write one out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there are pretty much like 3 different eras. I'm not going to get too deeply into them, and then I kind of have like overall favorites. I mean, I was just born in an era where I was like the target demo for the very first Nintendo game system and on. So it was just kind of like so we had some kind of older video game console pre-Nintendo. I don't fully remember what it was, and I did not look it up before. I did not try to find it before this episode, and maybe I should have so I can say it, and then someone's like, oh, that's so random. I had that too. But it was like a VHS operated thing, and you had like a keyboard and a joystick, and I don't fully remember it, so that's all I kind of have to go off of. It was super random. Like I said, my dad he owned at one point an electronics store. I don't know if maybe that's where he got that console from, but for Christmas one year, I think my grandparents got us a Nintendo. My dad played it more than we did. My dad's the original gamer. He was a PC gamer, but we had an original Nintendo NES, as they say, and I played like the original Super Mario, Duck Hunt, Paperboy. Those were kind of like the early ones, and then basically like every movie or fad that came out in the late 80s and early 90s was turned into like a platformer game. So there was like the Batman game in 1989 when the Michael Keaton one came out.
Oh yeah.
It was just like Super Mario, but it was just had like a Gotham background. I mean, they were all kind of the same. There was one called Me and My Blob, which was about a boy and his blob. A boy and his blob, I think that was what it was called. I know, I often wonder if these were like translated from Japanese and they just had like really random translations. Right. I don't know, but That was one where you kind of had like a sidekick who could he was a blob who could kind of turn into anything.
Oh, cool.
And so it was actually a really cool game. And then there was Fester's Quest, Uncle Fester, which is an extremely hard game that the video store clerk told me and my sister. They're like, this is a really hard game. And we were like, I was like 6 and she was like 9 or something like that, or 10. And he was like, this is a really hard game. And we were like, okay. And we got home. I think we maybe like made it 30 minutes in. And we were like, yeah, this game is really hard. So I don't remember. Maybe if someone else played that, they can remember and tell me if they ever finished it. But then I kind of got off of video games for a while. And then the Nintendo 64 came out, which was a really big deal because that was when PlayStation kind of had it. But N64 was the first time where things were like 3D. And there was like Super Mario 64 where it was like, it wasn't a platform anymore. It was like he was going into the world, and it was like you were seeing it from the view of him, and he was walking around. It was very three-dimensional, really cool. I was obsessed with Super Mario 64. You know this. You already know this about me. I was obsessed with 1080, the snowboarding game, and 1080 Avalanche, which I think came out on GameCube. I still have it. I still have my GameCube. I still have 1080 Avalanche. Sometimes when you're out of town, I sit in bed and I play it. It is such a fun game. It's such a fun game. But also there was a game called Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, yeah.
Which I played the newest one, and I was like sending you pictures because it's all Disney, and there was like a Frozen section, and so I was like sending you video like while I'm playing it, like she's singing it. She's singing it. Like
Anna, Elsa.
You have to, Anna and, what's her guy's name?
Kristoff,
and Olaf, they help you at some point.
Oh.
They help you with try to find Elsa or something. Yeah, the original Kingdom Hearts was really cool. That was all you have. I mean, Donald Duck and Goofy are like your sidekicks, so I mean, it's really cool.
Goofy.
There's a lot of like other Disney characters, and it's kind of like each game is like, okay, what Disney characters are gonna have for this one? So for the next Kingdom Hearts, the fans are like, we want an Encanto level. Like that's like the big thing that people are like they're like, if there's not an Encanto level, like, come on, like help us find Bruno, or like
that would be perfect.
Mirabelle's like your sidekick for that level, which would be so awesome, or Antonio's your sidekick for because they all have different powers and stuff, so it would be really cool.
Cute.
But yeah, so probably my all-time favorites, and I'll just go ahead and do that. Also, yeah, Tony Hawk Pro Skater and Mario Kart. Those are two other, but those are more just kind of like by myself, like waste time kind of video games. They're not like video games that like I have to think. It's just very like just mindless, like getting a combo, winning a race. It's very, like I said, very mindless. All right, all-time favorite video games. Number 1, 1080 Avalanche, duh. Super Mario 64. Until Dawn, which I still haven't seen the movie, but that's a really, really, really fun game where it's like choose your own adventure. You're in you're a character you're in a slasher movie essentially.
Oh, okay.
And you're with a bunch of people. It's really random. The actors that they got to motion capture for that game, they got Rami Malek before he was like famous.
Oh.
Cheyenne from Superstore is one of the characters. Hayden Panettiere is one of the characters. Like it's a really like star-studded video game. It's like kind of really random.
Like actually their image and likeness?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Like you can see it's Cheyenne, and she's like the mean girl. She's like the mean bitchy girl. Rami Malek is kind of like the nice guy. Hayden Panettiere is like the final girl. Like it's all they're these very typical characters, and each decision that you make sparks off the butterfly effect, and it's like choose your own adventure. So like you can play one game and everyone dies, or you can play the game and everyone survives, or you can play the game and certain people live and certain people die. Like it just depends on what decision you make at certain points where it has like the little butterfly icon, and it's all about like the butterfly effect. It is such a fun game. It is like probably one of the most fun games I ever played. Rick let me borrow his PS4 and let me play it because he knew I was gonna love it, and I finished it in like a day and a half. So it was like it was a lot of fun. So that's a good one. And then Kingdom Hearts 3 was a game that I just played. That's the one with Frozen. That was a lot of fun. And then there's the Final Fantasy games, which they've have so many of those, just like Castlevania. But my favorite one was probably Final Fantasy X, because that was when they started having video game trailers that looked like movies.
Oh.
kind of like now.
Oh, is it so it's like announcing that a video game is launching?
Yeah, so it was like a video game trailer where they show like clips of the game, kind of like what they do now. But I remember seeing the Final Fantasy X trailer in theaters when I went to go see like a kid's movie of some kind. And I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever. It looks like a movie. It looked real. Of course, probably now, if I played it now, the graphics would probably be like really dated. But at the time, I was like, this is incredible. Like, I was like, this looks so real.
Yeah.
And it was just really exciting to have like kind of video games reach a point to where video games were becoming such a big thing that like the trailers were being shown in movie theaters. Like, that was also a big deal. Now it's like, it's not a big deal. But back in 2001, it was like, that didn't happen.
Right. Because I was like, in the movie theater, like it was a movie. They were announcing like a mega commercial for the video to come out. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's neat.
So yeah, that's
I mean, it's great marketing.
I think the game that you probably watched me play the most was in my apartment was WarioWare.
Yes.
Was
that the one when all four of y'all would play?
That was the one where we were all fighting over the leaderboard, and we all had our dumb nicknames, and we all had our little avatar that we picked for ourselves, and it was all about the leaderboard, and we got so mad because Blake created a new character so he could have a better winning.
Remember he would do that.
So he could have a better winning percentage, so he could be higher up, even though he was ranked lower than me. Oh yeah, it became this huge ordeal. So then we let one of our other friends who didn't really hang out with us that often. We let one of our other friends create his own avatar, and while Blake was at work, we let him win every game.
Yeah,
so he could have a 100%, but like, you're never beating that. We'd be like, you're never beating that, and this is my console, so you can't delete it. You know, it's just like we were such buttheads. That was a really fun time in my life, but I don't miss it. Staying up until 5 o'clock in the morning playing video games, and then having to go to work in the morning, I don't miss it at all. So those are my video games.
Aww.
I love me some video games. And now
I always wanted to play them and be good at them because I knew so many people that did. I mean, my parents were just never going to buy that for us.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was like something I always was interested in, but just never had.
Well,
a
if
chance
Kingdom
to.
Hearts 4 comes out and it has an Encanto level, we'll play it.
I'll watch you play it.
Yeah.
Or I'm just not good at the buttons, the joystick.
I think you would enjoy watching. Because it is like a movie. I think you would enjoy watching me play The Last of Us, and I think you would enjoy watching me play Until Dawn.
Aw,
I think
Until Dawn, all
yes,
night.
Exactly. All right, let's get into this pilot summary. It's not long. Like I said, this wasn't a super long episode. I think I got 3 pages out of it.
Okay.
All right, Castlevania pilot summary. Wallachia. I really hope that's how it's pronounced. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced when I looked it up on Google. And they did like the pronunciation for me.
Got you.
Wallachia, 1455. Across the field are skeletons set on pikes. Bats fly across the bodies, but a knife pierces through one of them, wielded by a woman standing before a rather imposing castle. She inhales sharply as she knocks on the door. As the door slowly opens, she enters, and an opulent hallway greets her. Upon entering the castle, she introduces herself as Lisa of Lupu. She is then greeted by the house master, the master of the house, Vlad Dracula. She wants to become a doctor, but the backward inhabitants of her village have nothing to offer. Everyone says the master of the castle has advanced knowledge of the new science which she believes in. Vlad asks what Lisa has to offer in exchange for his knowledge. She replies that from what she can see, Vlad doesn't travel much, and she could teach him to explore, understand, and perhaps even like the world outside his castle. Taken aback, he admits that he hasn't had much faith in humanity, though he confesses she is not like most of the humans he has encountered. She believes that humanity would benefit immensely if she were allowed to share his advanced knowledge with it. So now we flash forward to 20 years later. So Lisa, we kind of flash forward immediately, and Lisa is tied to a stake, about to be burned. Lisa is to be burned alive on the order of the bishop, who considers her a witch. The bishop mistook the medical implements and herbs in her home, the very same she had received from Dracula years before, for witchcraft. With her last breath, she cries out for Dracula, now her husband, to not seek revenge against the city, and beseeches her love to not give in to the same hatred born of ignorance as other humans. The bishop decrees The bishop decrees her as she burns, declaring to the horrified crowd that the witch is calling out to Satan, her master. Dracula returns from traveling abroad and arrives at their cottage only to find it in ruins after being burnt down. He learns of his wife's fate from Mrs. Juvara, one of Lisa's patients, visiting the house with flowers in hand. Mrs. Juvara says the church condemned Lisa as a witch, but she refuses to believe. She refuses to believe it and instead wishes to pay her respects. In a rage, Dracula warns her to take her family and flee from Wallachia, his last kindness to any member of humanity in his wife's honor, before vanishing in a whirlwind of flames before her. So Targovishta, I believe is what it's called. In the city square, the fire begins to die, leaving nothing of Lisa but a blackened skeleton. The mayor of Targovishta congratulates the bishop for his vigilance, remarking that his actions have assured him a place in heaven. The bishop brushes off the compliment, saying he would prefer to stay on earth and continue his holy work, since there is so much evil in Wallachia, not to mention the rest of the world, that a man as pious as he could not root it all out in one lifetime, especially a man, he says darkly, saddled with a less pious superior like the archbishop. They are interrupted as Dracula's visage appears in smoke and flames over the pyre, demanding to know what happened to his wife. The bishop tries to convince people that Dracula isn't real, just a fiction who justified the practice of black magic, and his appearance is nothing to fear. It's just further proof that Lisa was a witch. Dracula is even more enraged, telling the crowd that his wife was a woman of science and the one reason in the world for him to tolerate humanity's stink on the land. By taking her from him, he promises they have signed their own death warrants. He allows the people 1 year to make peace with their lord, after which he will return with an army and purge all of humanity from Wallachia. Purge all of humanity from Wallachia. Dracula prepares to summon an army from hell, but his son, Alucard, confronts him. He begs his father to reconsider his course of action, urging him to focus his revenge on the one responsible for Lisa's death rather than on the innocent. Dracula retorts that there are no innocents. Any one of Wallachia's people could have stood up for Lisa, but instead, they blindly followed the church as it murdered her. When Alucard declares that he will not let his father tarnish his mother's memory by committing genocide, Dracula flies at him in a rage, grievously wounding him. A year after Lisa's death, the day of her burning is being celebrated as a festival. Outside the cathedral, the archbishop congratulates the flock, and by implication himself, for their success in earning God's love. He scoffs that the devil tried to frighten them with empty threats, but here they are, 1 year later, alive and well, with nothing to fear from the devil's lies and illusions. But as he finishes speaking, the sky darkens with clouds and blood rains from the sky, turning the crowd's happiness to horror and panic. Along with the blood, droplets fall fetal corpses looking like the failed offspring of bats and demons. That was some pretty crazy imagery. Right. Just it was really cool. It was really cool though. The cathedral's windows shatter, raining huge shards that impale the archbishop and his priests. The archbishop has just enough life left in him to look up and see flames envelop the cathedral and form Dracula's face. He says he gave the people a chance to flee, but instead of heeding his warnings, they are celebrating the day of his wife's murder. In an explosion of fire and thunder, Dracula's castle arises amid Targovishta, disgorging, releasing an army of monsters that massacre the inhabitants and immolate the rest of the city. Dracula orders them, once Targovishta is empty, to spread through the rest of Wallachia. In a tavern in the small town on the outskirts of Gresset, a farmer named Bosha. In a tavern, the small town on the outskirts of Gresset, a farmer named Bosha is regaling his half-brother Cobb and the innkeeper with a story about one of his goats and a man who really likes goats. I'm assuming it's Bosha, and how Bosha gave the man his just reward with the blade of a shovel. But now he complains he's being fined by the local magistrate because the man went blind, which is just another example of the injustices being heaped on the working class by the great and good. Moments later, a man named Peter, I'm assuming Peter?
Yeah.
A man named Peter comes running into the tavern, telling the patrons that Dracula's horde is now approaching Gresset. Bosha doesn't seem surprised, saying all of Wallachia's ills, from the mundane to the invasion of Dracula's army, can be blamed on its old families and its so-called great houses, like the worst of them, the Belmonts, who everyone knows dealt with monsters and black magic. Meanwhile, not far from the group sits a man alone at a table, indulging in ale and half listening to Boscia rant on. But when Boscia mentions the Belmonts, the man curses under his breath and tries to hide his face. So that's Trevor. That's Trevor Belmont.
Yep.
End of episode.
End of episode.
Yeah, I mean,
it was good. I mean, it has a story. It's
yeah.
familiar. The animation was great. Like you said, it was just kind of that old school look, but you know, obviously done currently. So,
right.
Yeah, it was good. I like it.
I liked it too. All right, ready to wrap this one up?
Let's do it.
All right, thanks for... Well, that wraps up this episode of We Judge a Show by its pilot. Sorry. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can follow us on Instagram at We Judge Pilot Pod. We're also on Facebook. You can leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
All right, for Castlevania, I have the vampire, the gaming devices, such as like the joystick, and
There's a few.
then they have like a couple of other ones. So any of those, the skeleton, the door, the castle, the fire, the witch, the heart, flowers, the party hat because they're having a freaking party over
having a festival. Yeah.
The devil, blood, the bats, the goat, and the beer for the tavern at the end. All right. Well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.